Chapter 500, Nightmare Space. Bang! A mass of frost-covered vines burst from the ground, soaring into the air at an astonishing speed, resembling a snow-white ice vine serpent. It opened its massive mouth, unleashing a torrent of cold air. On the back of this ice vine serpent, Qingyu carried a black coffin, her gaze firmly locked onto the third seat, her gray eyes flickering with light. The third seat snorted coldly and pointed at the ice vine serpent from a distance. Several menacing bolts of lightning converged into a blinding lightning sword, instantly piercing through the air and striking into the mouth of the ice vine serpent. The surging lightning coursed over the surface of the vines, shattering them from the center. Qinyu's expression remained unchanged as she slowly spoke to the ice vines beneath her. All the forbidden ruins he recorded require that layer of black shell to be activated. As long as we shatter it, Ninin will be completely ineffective. He understood. A voice emerged from the dissipating ice vine serpent. Whoosh! A figure clad in jade armor, surrounded by 9 forbidden objects, flew out from the disintegrating ice vine. A tattered gray cloak flashed with a glimmer, and Bai Li, plump and round, transformed into a shadow, darting straight toward the third seat's face. He reached out and grabbed one of the forbidden objects, seizing a ram's horn and lightly tapped it against the third seat. Zodiac of the Yellow Path, Aries. The tip of the ram's horn burst forth with a flash of white light, ignoring the armor and landing directly on the third seat's shoulder, causing a spray of blood to erupt in an instant. The third seat winced in pain, his expression beneath the black shell twisting slightly. Before he could react, a deep blue figure shot out from the pit in the ground. Jialon held Heaven's Gate, soaring into the air like an arrow. The tip of her spear glinted and a blinding golden beam shone once more. Sizzle! At the critical moment, a flash of electricity erupted from the third seat, causing him to vanish from his original spot. When he steadied himself and looked at Jialon, his eyes were filled with shock. How is she still alive? The blow that had just struck her had consumed a massive amount of his mental energy. Even other Klein would be left half dead after taking that hit. How is she acting like nothing happened? Darkest corruption. In the night, Lin Chia extended his hand, gently grasping at the third seat. The ground, stained by darkness, caused fragments of stone and steel to rise, gathering in front of him into 3 cones, quietly hovering in the air. At the same time, a faint golden light blossomed on these 3 cones. Realm of Mundane Gods. He raised the praying abyss, sword in his right hand, and tapped it against the cones imbued with the miracle property. A terrifying kinetic energy erupted, and the 3 cones instantly pierced through space, whistling out with a deafening sonic boom. The third seat transformed into a flash of lightning, easily dodging the flight paths of the 3 cones. However, by sheer coincidence, the trajectories of 2 of the cones intertwined in mid-air, colliding with each other. The resulting debris exploded outward like a barrage, crashing into the nearby third seat with terrifying kinetic energy, leaving numerous dents in the black shell. On him, the woman's phantom gradually blurred and the surrounding lightning dimmed. The third seat's expression darkened immensely. Just as Qingyu had said, the forbidden ruins he recorded must be activated through this black shell. If this shell sustained too much damage, Ninin would be forced to stop. Damn it! If I were at my peak, as long as 3 black flowers bloomed simultaneously, none of these guys would leave here alive. The third seat cursed inwardly. Qingyu watched the third seat's disheveled figure, a smile creeping onto her lips. At that moment, a black ring mixed in with the flying debris came straight toward him. Qingyu was taken aback and reached out to catch the ring. Soul-severing blade? Qingyu looked up at the figure in the corner wearing a pig mask, who had his back to him, his right hand hidden behind him, secretly making a yay gesture. Qingyu scanned the surroundings, confirming that neither the third seat nor the 9th seat had noticed him. He swiftly put the ring back on his finger, then feigned a look of deep sorrow, mumbling something as he charged toward the 9th seat. Jiang Air had dragged the possession of the 9th seat to its limits. Now free, the 9th seat began attacking the floating Jiang Air. However, no matter how he attacked, he couldn't touch the incorporeal Jiang Air. Frowning slightly, he ultimately changed his target and began pursuing Qingyu, who was carrying the black coffin. Boom! The air in front of him was suddenly compressed, and a violent explosion forced him to halt. The ninth seat turned to the side and saw Shin Qingzhu running toward him with bloodshot eyes, looking deranged. His expression immediately turned serious. "Have you also been mentally controlled?" After hesitating for a moment, he abandoned the pursuit of An Qingyu and turned to rescue the controlled Shin Qingzhu. Generally speaking, there are many ways to deal with such mental control situations, such as directly eliminating the caster or using external factors to awaken the controlled person's consciousness. Given the current situation, the ninth seat found it very difficult to catch the highly mobile Lin Chia. Thus, he could only find a way to awaken Shin Qingzhu's consciousness. The most effective method was to restart his consciousness, which meant knocking him out. The ninth seat stepped on a spiral of air, his surging mental energy swirling. He focused on Shin Qingzhu's bloodshot eyes, his fists clenched tightly, veins bulging. Shin Qingzhu's mouth twitched slightly. He snapped his fingers twice, creating two high-pressure air walls between him and the ninth seat, but they were quickly shattered by the ninth seat's lethal fists. Unlike the 12th seat, there was an absolute gap in realm between the ninth seat and Shin Qingzhu. Once the ninth seat got serious, it was very difficult for Shin Qingzhu to win against him, especially since Shin Qingzhu himself didn't want to use lethal moves against him. Seeing Shin Qingzhu in a precarious situation, Chao Yuan rushed over quickly. Just then, a strange, brilliant light erupted around the ninth seat and Shin Qingzhu. Shin Qingzhu felt a flash before his eyes, as if he were spinning in a dizzying whirl, and then everything around him fell silent. The ninth seat's fist rapidly enlarged in front of him. Bang! Shin Qingzhu was sent flying backward. With this punch, the ninth seat had certainly held back. His intention was not to harm Shin Qingzhu but to knock him out of the mental control state. After sending Shin Qingzhu flying, the ninth seat looked around and realized that, at some point, this underground space had been left with only him and Shin Qingzhu. The group of masked individuals and the third seat had all vanished without a trace. This is the nightmare space? The ninth seat seemed to recall something, a hint of joy appearing in his eyes. He turned to look at the altar behind him, where a blood-soaked man in a tattered tailcoat sat, his face extremely pale. Lord murmuring. Chapter 501, Hypocrite. The sudden appearance of this brilliant light immediately captured everyone's attention. Shin Qingzhu and the ninth seat, who were still in battle, had vanished without a trace, along with the shattered altar located in the center of the underground. This unexpected change made Lin Chia furrow his brows slightly. Although he didn't know exactly what had happened, it was definitely not a good sign. That dazzling and strange light had taken both of them along with the altar, bringing Shin Qingzhu, who was about to escape danger, back into peril. In contrast, the third seat revealed a cold smile as he saw the light. Lord Yu has returned. Today none of you will escape. He raised his arm, and from the 4 swirling vortexes behind him, the remaining 2 black flowers, still in bud, quickly bloomed. 2 figures emerged on the surface of the dark shell, overlapping with the original female phantom. Buzz. A low humming sound emanated from the manor, followed by a series of ear-piercing screeches that made one's teeth ache. A large amount of steel rebar mixed with various metal objects broke through the thick walls, swirling into the air like a circular pitch-black cloud slowly rotating. At the same time, the originally clear sky rapidly darkened. A streak of black light centered around the third seat, sweeping across the entire manor in the blink of an eye. In the courtyard, small fragments of stone began to float. Glass and stones also started to rise, and the puddles in the corners of the courtyard rippled, as if turned upside down, flowing bizarrely toward the sky. Floor tiles, sofas, cars, even the spire of the manor began to detach from the walls, slowly floating into the air. A sense of weightlessness enveloped everyone's bodies. Lin Chia found himself uncontrollably drifting toward the sky. The existence of gravity seemed to have been completely erased. Without a point of support, he could only slowly and sluggishly hover in the air. Controlling metal and also controlling gravity? And Qingyu frowned slightly. In midair, the third seat was surrounded by crackling lightning. His left hand, glowing with a gray light, manipulated all the metal within the forbidden area, while his right hand, glowing with a black light, controlled the gravity within the same range. The laws of the entire manor seemed to be toyed with in his grasp. This is Klein. A serious expression appeared in Lin Chia's eyes. This state of his won't last long. And Qingyu observed his figure and adjusted her glasses, saying, his body is already severely injured, and now forcibly manipulating so much from the forbidden area will inevitably harm his essence. Why is he doing this? Ever since Yu took Shen Qingzhu and the altar away, he has been recklessly unleashing power without regard for the consequences. If I'm not mistaken, he is stalling for Yu. And Qingyu pondered. Stalling for time. Lin Chia looked at the spot where Shen Qingzhu had originally stood. What exactly do they want to do? Nightmare space. Shen Qingzhu struggled to get up from the ground, shaking his head slightly to dispel some of the intense dizziness. Little Shen, are you awake? The ninth seat walked up to him, frowning as he asked. Shen Qingzhu glanced at him, then at Yu not far away, and silently nodded. Yeah, I've shaken off that state. The punch from the ninth seat had indeed left him a bit dazed, but that didn't prevent him from recognizing the current situation. With Yu here, it was no longer a matter of pretending to be confused. He rubbed his temples and looked around. This was still the underground space, and the altar remained in its original position. The massive sword mark above his head still existed. The difference was that Lin Chia and the third seat had both vanished. Where is this? He asked in confusion. It's my nightmare space. From the altar, Yu's weak voice slowly came through. I used my forbidden area to drag you and this altar into the nightmare. Although it looks the same as the outside world, it is actually a different space. This is a dream? It is a dream, but also not. Yu slowly stood up from the altar, lightly waving his right hand. The blood-stained and wounded tailcoat vanished into thin air, and then a clean new tailcoat appeared on him. Everything that happens here can affect the real world. This place is a true nightmare. What about the third seat? Why didn't he come in? The ninth seat asked in confusion. We need someone to stall for time. Stall for time. Shen Qingzhu keenly grasped the key point. What are we supposed to do? Yu's pale lips curled slightly as he pointed to the altar beneath his feet. Of course, we need to revive this altar and summon the god of the underworld. The god of the underworld. A flicker of brilliance flashed in Shen Qingzhu's eyes. But the spiritual energy in this altar isn't full yet. It will take at least 2 more days. The ninth seat pondered before speaking. Moreover, with the third seat, 7th seat and 12th seat absent, it may take even longer. Do we have that much time? No, Yu said calmly. But we have other methods. Ninth seat, come up here. Hearing Yu call him, the ninth seat's eyes showed confusion, but under the influence of the soul contract, he still stepped forward and lightly jumped onto the top of the altar. Lord Yu, how can I assist you? The ninth seat slightly bowed. Yu gazed at him for a long time before slowly speaking. Ninth seat. No, Heilin, how many years have you followed me? 11 years, Lord Yu. 11 years. Yu looked into his eyes, a look of nostalgia appearing. I still remember the first time I saw you. You were a young man full of unfulfilled potential, clearly possessing great power, yet willingly sinking into this filthy society. Yes, Lord Yu. The ninth seat seemed to recall something, his gaze somewhat helpless. If I hadn't met you, I might have starved to death on the streets. I remember you liked to watch Water Margin back then. Your memory is truly remarkable. Haha, because you told me I was your Song Jiang. Yes, in my heart you have always been Song Jiang. Then, Yu's smile gradually faded. Are you willing to die for me, your Song Jiang, like the heroes of Liangshan? The ninth seat stood frozen in place. Lord Yu. Heilin. Yu said calmly, the spiritual energy that this altar lacks is equivalent to that of a Wuliang. As long as you die, the source conductors below will absorb all your spiritual energy, and the god of the underworld altar will activate. For the believers, for me, die. The ninth seat stared blankly into Yu's eyes, and after a long time he let out a long sigh. Lord Yu. Do you have any last words? You really haven't changed at all. Oh, what do you mean? You are still just like 19 years ago, not fond of reading. This inexplicable statement left Yu somewhat bewildered. Song Jiang was never a hero, he was just a hypocrite. And so are you. The ninth seat reached out, swiftly gripping Yu's throat. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Sorry, my esteemed Song Jiang. I'm an undercover agent. Chapter 502, Homicide. Shen Qingzhu was dumbfounded. Also dumbfounded was the murmuring figure being choked by the ninth seat. This is impossible. The murmurer's eyes were filled with disbelief. I planted a soul contract on you. You can't betray me. Soul contract. A hint of a smile appeared in the ninth seat's eyes. That thing isn't as useful as you think. In front of that esteemed one's divine consciousness, it is quite fragile. Divine consciousness? The murmurer frowned tightly. What is that? The unique method of the chairman. You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Chairman? Aren't you one of the night watchers? The ninth seat shook his head. No. What other organizations are there in the Great Xia besides my ancient god church? Ancient god church? Just a tumor in the Great Xia. The corner of the ninth seat's mouth curled slightly. Your perspective is too narrow. You might want to look further, like, beyond the Great Xia. The murmurer frowned. I don't believe there are any forces that exist in the fog. Thus, a tumor can only be a tumor. The ninth seat sneered. You've been lurking by my side for so long. What exactly is your purpose? To burst this tumor at the right moment. The ninth seat shook his head regretfully. It's a pity that the ancient God Church only accepts divine agents, so I could only join the believers to monitor your every move. Just you, a Wuliang? What of being a Wuliang? Am I not still gripping your throat? The ninth seat spoke slowly. Sometimes patience is more important than strength. 11 years. Your patience is indeed terrifying. But I didn't expect you to secretly send the third seat and the first seat to wipe out Team 008. The ninth seat's eyes narrowed. I was puzzled. I had left so many marks to remind Team 008, yet the night watchers still showed no signs of movement. The murmurer stared at him for a long time, a hint of coldness appearing in his eyes. Heelin, I must admit your identity surprises me greatly, but if you think you've won, you're being a bit too naive. The medium team has been hunting me for so long and still couldn't kill me. How could I easily die at your hands? As his voice fell, his figure began to bizarrely fade, like smoke blown away by a gentle breeze, dissipating into the air. The ninth seat's eyes narrowed. He almost reflexively turned around. A powerful spiral energy burst from his palm, rushing towards the figure in the black tailcoat. Don't forget, this is a nightmare I created. The murmurer stepped forward, his figure instantly phasing out. The two spiraling energies passed through his body as if he were nothing. In the next moment he appeared right in front of the ninth seat. That hand, clad in a white glove, lightly pressed against the ninth seat's chest, as if a heavy hammer had struck a sheet of white paper, causing the ninth seat's chest to instantly cave in. The ninth seat spat out a mouthful of blood, crashing heavily to the edge of the altar, blood flowing and gradually pooling into a small puddle. The murmurer let out a muffled groan, black blood once again flowing from his 7 orifices. His face turned as pale as paper, and even walking began to make him sway slightly. Once again channeling so much power exacerbated the already fragmented mental energy of the murmurer. The residual sword energy within him rampaged again, slicing through his internal organs. Damn! The murmurer's vision blurred. He walked towards the severely injured ninth seat while muttering to himself. At the edge of the altar, the ninth seat watched the approaching murmurer, his eyes icy cold. A look of hesitation appeared on the murmurer's face. His current state was truly one of a burnt-out oil lamp, making it difficult to use his escape ability again. If the ninth seat were to fight to the death to kill him, he might really succeed. At that moment, the murmurer seemed to think of something, and the corners of his mouth slightly lifted. It seems I won't need to make a move myself. He turned his head, and he didn't know when, but Xin Qingzhu had already jumped up from beneath the altar, standing beside the murmurer. The murmurer extended his hand, trembling slightly as he pointed at the ninth seat, his voice hoarse. Xin Qingzhu, kill him for me. Now the believers are basically all but wiped out, but as long as I am alive, the believers can still be reformed. Just as I told you before, a brand new era is about to begin, and you are destined to be the one who leads the entire believers to glory. Kill him and you will be the first seat of the believers. Xin Qingzhu stared at him for a moment and nodded. All right, I understand. He turned around, facing away from the murmurer, and slowly walked towards the ninth seat lying on the ground. The ninth seat raised his head, looking at the young man, a faint smile appearing on his blood-streaked face. Do you have any last words? Shin Qingzhu asked calmly. None. Really none. If you truly have no last words, how about I come up with one for you? Go ahead. Shin Qingzhu took a deep breath and shouted loudly. SpongeBob. Let's go catch jellyfish. As his resonant voice echoed in the underground space, the murmurer behind him froze for a moment, then his pupils trembled uncontrollably, his expression struggling violently. Two souls that had been suppressed deep within him suddenly leaped with unprecedented joy. In that instant the murmurer could no longer maintain his conscious clarity, and the remaining rationality completely collapsed. He raised both hands high, his face flushed with excitement, and shouted loudly. Okay. Patrick. Let's go catch jellyfish. Swish. Shin Qingzhu instantly turned around, pouring all his mental energy into the black ring he held in his hand, then threw it forcefully. A black soul-long knife extended from the ring, instantly piercing through space and stabbing into the murmurer's heart. One strike. Soul severed. The murmurer's hands remained raised, his excited smile frozen, like a comical sculpture fixed in place. His eyes became vacant, completely losing their luster. Shin Qingzhu did not let his guard down. Instead he stepped forward and snapped his fingers in midair. Snap. Raging flames erupted from beneath the murmurer's feet, quickly engulfing his entire body. The flames licked at the murmurer, and the crackling sounds echoed in the silent underground space. This was not only to deliver the finishing blow but also to burn his corpse, preventing any mental energy from flowing into the altar, completing the last part of the mental energy. Crack. A crisp shattering sound suddenly rang out, the surrounding void fracturing inch by inch, and this nightmare space began to gradually fade. The corners of Shin Qingzhu's mouth uncontrollably lifted. Only at this moment did he dare to truly confirm. The murmurer was dead. He killed him. Chapter 503. Don't live anymore. The nightmare space slowly shattered, and the surrounding environment continued to twist, intertwining between illusion and reality. Shin Qingzhu picked up the ring on the ground and walked towards the ninth seat at the edge of the altar. The ninth seat lay on his back, a pool of blood gradually spreading around him. He turned his head to look at Shin Qingzhu as he approached, a faint smile curling his pale lips. How are you? Shin Qingzhu asked, frowning as he looked at the blood pool beneath him. I'm not dead yet, the ninth seat replied weakly. Shin Qingzhu's expression relaxed slightly as he sat down beside the ninth seat and pulled 2 cigarettes from his pocket, offering one to him. Are you trying to make me die faster? The ninth seat said with a hint of melancholy. Shin Qingzhu silently put both cigarettes back into his pocket. I'm worried you can't hold on, and I want you to be a bit more alert. You don't need to secretly increase the oxygen concentration around me with your abilities. I told you this injury won't kill me. Oh. Shin Qingzhu shrugged. You knew I was an undercover agent all along? To be honest, you have quite a few flaws. Like what? You're too kind. The ninth seat spoke slowly. In the forest you secretly saved Bailey Tuming. At the Bailey building you helped those young people deal with the dirge, even risking being killed by Zhuqing to take down Bailey Xian for them. And when you were channeling spiritual energy into the altar, your performance was just too fake. I could tell at a glance whether you were genuinely exhausting your spiritual energy. So, when I knocked you out in the courtyard, that was intentional? I went out to shop so many times and couldn't contact Team 008, so I had to see if you had any tricks up your sleeve. The ninth seat glanced at the sword mark above him. I just didn't expect your trick to be so fierce. Then the stories you told me in the nightclub were all lies? Half true, half false. The ninth seat paused. The first half is mostly true. The second half is a backstory I prepared for myself. Backstory. Otherwise, how could I say your acting isn't good enough? You didn't even prepare a complete character background for yourself. If it weren't for the confidence of the murmur in its sole contract and my cover for you, your identity would have been exposed long ago. Shin Qingzhu thought of the several tests from the seventh seat and sighed helplessly. Indeed, in his eagerness to completely eliminate the believers, he had been a bit too hasty. If it weren't for the ninth seat always covering for him, his identity could have really been exposed. However, none of this matters anymore. The ninth seat looked at the gradually appearing figures of Lin Chier and others in the illusion, smiling as he spoke. Your time walking in darkness has come to an end. You can return to the light now. And you? Shin Qingzhu turned to look at him. I don't know yet. The ninth seat shook his head. I want to go out and find the president, but I don't have the ability to walk in the fog, so I can only wait for them to come back. But that's fine, I have enough money saved up to squander. Even if I go to nightclubs every day to find girls, I can enjoy it for 70 years. Shin Qingzhu looked at the ninth seat's serious demeanor and silently swallowed back the words he had originally prepared to mock him with. Bang! With a soft sound, the surrounding nightmare completely shattered, and the once chaotic battlefield reappeared before the two. In that instant, a strong sense of weightlessness enveloped Shin Qingzhu and the ninth seat. Shin Qingzhu's body began to float automatically, while the ninth seat, along with the altar beneath him, also started to drift towards the sky. What is this? Shin Qingzhu frowned slightly and looked up. Large boulders floated in the sky, and in the center of the steel clouds, a figure enveloped in electric light hovered there. Around him, figures continuously shattered the boulders beneath their feet, using the force to propel themselves into the sky. Swoosh! A blinding golden beam pierced the sky as the third seat transformed into lightning, constantly spinning in the air to evade these attacks. With a gentle wave of his hand, a torrential rain of metal began to pour down from the steel clouds above. Chaos of the universe. Under Bai Li Pangpang, a massive yin-yang diagram unfolded. His hand seemed to grasp a button in the void, suddenly rotating in the opposite direction. The countless metal fragments froze in mid-air. Disarm. At the same time, a wave of darkness rapidly engulfed the entire sky. Lin Chia slowly clenched his left fist, and the metal fragments frozen in the air were all eroded by the darkness, twisting like dough. Then he raised his right hand, wielding a white long knife, and swung it in the air. The snow-white blade shadows intertwined in front of Lin Chia. With each sound of the blade ringing, hundreds of metal fragments in the air were instantly sliced into fine debris, scattering in the air. The third seat frowned slightly just as he was about to do something. His body suddenly trembled. He could clearly feel that deep within his soul, a contract closely tied to him was quietly unraveling. Immediately after, his soul began to wither rapidly. His complexion turned extremely pale. Lord Murmur, how is this possible? How can this be? The third seat was well aware of what this anomaly meant, and an unprecedented fear appeared in his eyes. Once the soul contract was signed, his soul was completely bound to Murmur, unable to betray or escape. If Murmur's soul were erased, he would naturally vanish as well. Murmur is dead. He suddenly looked down and saw the broken gray-white altar slowly rising from the ground due to weightlessness, with a severely injured ninth seat lying on it. Shin Qingzhu was stepping on the air, rushing towards this place. He did not see Murmur's figure. But why were the ninth seat and Shin Qingzhu unharmed? He stared blankly at the ninth seat and Shin Qingzhu for a moment before realizing a certain possibility, his eyes filled with intense unwillingness and rage. You are undercover? He glared at Shin Qingzhu, almost shouting, You killed Lord Murmur? Buzz. The 9 black vortices behind him trembled and began to collapse, while the gravity disrupting the entire battlefield also started to become chaotic. The steel clouds suspended in the sky were gradually descending. The third seat's soul had already begun to wither, and his mental energy collapsed along with it, making it impossible for these forbidden ruins to continue. Shin Qingzhu narrowed his eyes slightly, not denying it. At this point, everything no longer needed to be concealed. Damn it! Damn it! You killed him. I have to die too. The third seat's face twisted in rage like a terrorist pushed to a dead end, his body trembling with fury. His gaze swept around, finally landing on the gray-white altar. It seemed he thought of something and madness flickered in his eyes. If I die, none of you will survive. Chapter 504. The Underworld Death Realm. Seeing his appearance, the pupil of the ninth seat suddenly constricted. He endured the intense pain in his body and shouted at the crowd in the sky, Stop him! Don't let him get close to the altar. Before his words fell, the third seat raised his hand and slammed it down heavily. The gravity field enveloping the entire manor instantly reversed, increasing the gravity by 20 times from its original state. The The people who were still in a state of weightlessness were like being struck by an invisible giant hand, crashing directly to the ground. At the same time, the heavy steel clouds suspended in the sky suddenly plummeted. A massive shadow instantly covered the entire manor. Jialon, Lin Jie, pinned to the ground by the gravity, watched as the nearly 1,000-square-meter steel block fell and suddenly shouted, "Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh." The spear of the heavenly gate pierced through several afterimages, and golden beams of light instantly punctured several large holes in the rapidly descending steel clouds, just enough to envelop several figures. Boom! The steel clouds crashed to the ground, collapsing the entire manor, leveling everything around, leaving only Lin Jie and a few others still standing in place. Their figures showed no signs of hesitation as they rushed up into the sky, chasing after that flash of lightning. However, the third seat was simply too fast. Before the others could get close, the third seat had already dived down directly above the altar, surrounded by crackling thunder, showing no signs of slowing down as he continued to charge forward. A sinister smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Everyone must die. As the lightning dissipated, he crashed headlong into the top of the altar at an astonishing speed, completely unprepared. Bang! A muffled sound echoed. Blood-red flowers splattered on the altar. The mangled third seat collapsed on the altar, with fresh blood flowing along the cracks of the altar, seeping into those yellow-brown source conductors, emitting a faint spiritual light. "This is bad," the ninth seat murmured to himself. In the next moment, a terrifying black beam of light suddenly erupted from the top of the altar, shooting straight into the sky. The clear sky instantly dimmed at a visible speed. A chilling aura spread between heaven and earth. Above the sky, Zhou Ping, who was flying in on his sword, saw this scene and his expression grew serious. "The altar has already been destroyed, hasn't it?" He looked at the seemingly endless black beam of light, his brows slightly furrowing. "This is going to be troublesome." Centered around this black beam, a dark and eerie city silhouette was outlined in the sky, suspended like a mirror above the clouds, solidifying at a visible speed. Dense and chilling death energy poured down from the suspended eerie city, making one feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. The cold wind swept through. Lin Jie and the others looked at the inverted city above them, their faces extremely grim. In the end, it still revived. Xin Qingzhu carried the severely injured ninth seat to the side and gently placed him on the ground. The latter looked at the sky, a bitter expression on his face. "What exactly is that?" Xin Qingzhu asked in confusion. "The underworld god altar is naturally used to summon the underworld god," the ninth seat slowly spoke. "Do you know Osiris?" Hearing this name, Lin Jie's brows immediately furrowed. "One of the 9 pillars of Egypt, the underworld god Osiris?" Lin Jie certainly knew this name. It wasn't the first time he had heard it. Back in Fengdu, he learned the truth about the shattered Fengdu from the souls there, and Osiris was one of the 4 outer gods who took the fragments of Fengdu back then. Exactly. The ninth seat pointed with his chin at the gray-white altar floating in the air. "That is the thing used to summon him. The city inverted above us is his underworld realm." But how could an altar to summon an Egyptian underworld god appear in Lintang? Bai Li Pangpang asked in confusion. "At first I wasn't clear either, but now I've figured it out." The ninth seat closed his eyes. "It should be that the wind vane dragon swallowed that altar while it was abroad, then returned through the underground to Daxia, transporting it to Lintang City." Why must it be Lintang City? I don't know, but it's certain that the ancient god church wants to use this altar to bypass the guarding forces at the borders of Daxia and directly summon the underworld god Osiris, to destroy the existing order, thus creating the dark evil god era they pursue. Inviting a wolf into the house? Bai Li Pangpang frowned and cursed. The ancient god church is truly despicable. An organization controlled by a group of evil gods will naturally stop at nothing to achieve their goals. They are a cancer to Daxia, the ninth seat murmured. "It's just a pity that even after fighting to this extent we still couldn't stop it." Chao Yuan pondered for a moment. "But doesn't it seem meaningless for them to do this? Since the underworld god has descended into Daxia, the Daxia gods will definitely not sit idly by. Even Loki and Indra could only stumble in Daxia. What kind of storm can an underworld god stir up? I'm also curious. Since they know there are Daxia gods stationed here, Why would Osiris respond to the summoning and come here alone? Is he rushing to his death? The ninth seat's brows furrowed even tighter. In the sky, the inverted underworld realm became increasingly solid, and the entire Lintang had already fallen into darkness, with no light able to penetrate that black city to reach the ground. It was clearly still late autumn, yet the temperature had suddenly dropped to around -9 degrees. Keep in mind this is the south. Dense death energy rolled in the sky, and at the center of this underworld realm, there was also a reflection of a gray-white altar. The black beam connected the two altars, like a mirror, completely flipping the city on the ground upside down. Faintly, a withered figure draped in a pale robe with a golden belt around its waist, stepped out from the black beam. Its eye sockets were deeply sunken, its skin devoid of any color, dark and cracked, resembling a corpse that had been dead for a long time, now revived. It held a golden crook, emanating an eerie ghostly light. It stood in the center of the mirror, with the real modern world above its head and the dark eerie underworld realm beneath its feet. A complete and powerful divine pressure suddenly descended. This was not the level of the Yama avatar that descended in Fengdu. This was the true, fully realized body of the Egyptian underworld god. Its gaze swept across the modern world above, looking into the distance. Those eyes, devoid of pupils, glowed with an eerie pallor, as if piercing through space, searching for something. I, the great lord of the underworld, the god of death and eternal life, Osiris, have arrived here. Dasho gods. Where are you? Ding. A crisp sword sound echoed in the air. In the next moment, a man dressed in a black shirt, carrying a sword sheath, stood suspended in front of him. A gentle breeze lifted a corner of his shirt. He slowly raised his head. Are you worthy of my Dasha gods taking action? Chapter 505. Battle with the God of Death. Shijin City. Sanjio's rustic restaurant. Suiqing pushed open the glass door and stepped into the empty restaurant, heading straight for the kitchen. It wasn't mealtime, and aside from Sanjio, who was reading a newspaper, there were no other customers in the place. Hello, how many people are you? Seeing a guest, Sanjio smiled and stood up. Sorry, I'm looking for someone. Suiqing smiled politely, then lifted the cloth covering the kitchen door and quickly walked inside. Sanjio clicked his tongue, realizing she wasn't there to eat, and wobbled back to his seat. Suiqing. Ye Fan, who was rolling up his sleeves to wash dishes, looked up in surprise upon seeing her, then his expression turned serious. Something happened? Suiqing nodded and handed a document to Ye Fan. 2 minutes ago, there was a powerful divine energy fluctuation in Lintang City. After analysis, it was determined to be the Egyptian god of the underworld, Osiris, designated as Divine Code 029. Osiris. Ye Fan, ignoring the water on his hands, quickly flipped through the document. Why is there no movement at the border? Someone set up an altar in Lintang City and summoned him directly. After reading all the documents, Ye Fan furrowed his brow. Why now of all times? Could it be that those outer gods have figured something out? Ye Fan pondered for a moment. It seems likely. Otherwise, how would they dare to bring Osiris here directly? If that's the case, things could get troublesome. There's still half a year until the time set by the celestial sovereign. If those outer gods really attack during this period, what should we do? Half a year. Ye Fan sighed deeply. Restoring the heavenly quartz core is a process of reshaping the great Tao. It cannot be interrupted or disturbed by outside forces. During this time, all the gods of the great Xia involved in the restoration cannot intervene. If something really happens, we'll have to rely on ourselves. Relying on humanity to fight against the gods. Suiqing shook her head bitterly. If it were just 1 or 2 gods, it might be manageable, but if it escalates into a large-scale divine war, how could we possibly withstand it? Ye Fan patted Suiqing's shoulder, and after a moment of silence he spoke slowly. Suiqing, others may be afraid, but we cannot be. Even if the sky falls, it must be us who bear it. Suiqing took a deep breath, adjusted her mindset and nodded. So what should we do now? The Sword Saint is already confronting Osiris, but he can only hold him off at most. He can't kill a 9-pillar god. If this drags on, Osiris will eventually catch on. Ye Fan walked to the window and looked up at the sky, calmly saying, There is a great Xia god who did not participate in the restoration of the heavenly court. With him around, Osiris won't be able to stir up much trouble. Lintang City. The god of the underworld Osiris hovered in the air, his pale eyes fixed on the young man with the sword on his back, his withered face betraying no emotion. A human, yet you have come this far. You surprise me. His hoarse voice echoed in the air. Zhou Ping remained silent. You must be the strongest among humans, right? Osiris continued. Unfortunately, you still lack something to defeat me. Zhou Ping slowly spoke. How would I know without trying? Ding. A crisp sound of a sword ringing erupted from the sword sheath on his back, mingled with a faint dragon's roar resonating through the clouds. Dragon elephant unsheathed. Zhou Ping gripped the sword hilt with one hand and stepped forward. Before he could swing the long sword, a massive sword scar had already split the thick clouds apart, the chilling sword energy aimed directly at Osiris's face, bursting forth in an instant. Osiris stood in the air, unmoving as he gently raised his curved staff and pointed it at the void before him. A strange, ghostly glow erupted from the tip of the staff. In an instant, the pitch-black sky turned into an eerie grayish-white as if covered by a thin veil, while the invisible sword energy emitted a black light, freezing in midair, strikingly conspicuous. As Osiris lowered his staff, the black sword energy shattered inch by inch, causing the surrounding air to vibrate with a buzzing sound, dissipating without a trace. Zhou Ping's brow furrowed slightly. That last sword strike, though merely a probe, made him feel that Osiris's divine power was deep and unfathomable, much stronger than the Poseidon he had encountered before. Now he needed to get serious. His eyes narrowed slightly, an unprecedented sword intent blossomed from his gaze. He lightly traced the tip of his sword, instantly slicing through space, his figure vanishing from the spot. The next moment, behind Osiris, a dazzling sword light erupted like a blazing sun. Boom! In the center of the pitch-black ghost city suspended in the clouds, a 2-kilometer-long sword scar was forcibly carved out, the rolling sword energy filling the sky like an ocean of sword energy cascading down from the heavens, surging endlessly. In the underworld, 2 figures, one black and one white, alternated at a dizzying speed. Thunderous sounds echoed from the clouds. In the ruins, Lin Chia and the others looked up at the sky, their eyes filled with shock. They knew the sword saint was strong, but they never expected him to be this powerful. Going head-to-head with the god of the underworld. Bai Li Pang Pang swallowed hard, murmuring, Sword Saint, are you really human? Probably, Lin Chia nodded. After all, gods shouldn't be socially anxious. This is the might of humanity's strongest combat power. Chao Yuan couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. Who would have thought that Zhou Ping, who diligently swept the floor and washed dishes in the warehouse, was now clashing head-on with a god of the underworld? Lin Chia and the others looked at the sword-wielding figure in the sky, suddenly feeling an inexplicable sense of pride. This fierce person fighting against the gods up there was their teacher. With the Sword Saint as their teacher, wouldn't they be able to walk sideways in the Great Xia in the future? In the underworld, Zhou Ping swung his sword, leveling a large area of ghostly creatures before him. Osiris flickered into the sky, and a serious expression finally appeared on his withered face. Dense death energy rolled around Zhou Ping but could not approach his body at all. He stood there like a sword that was sharp and exuded a murderous aura. Osiris remained silent for a long time, his pale eyes narrowing slightly. He extended his palm and reached toward the modern world above. The world turned gray and white again as strange laws of power flowed, and phantoms were drawn from the city, flowing toward the suspended underworld. Those were the souls of the dying. Though their physical lifespans were nearing their end, they had not yet died. The connection between these souls and their bodies was gradually fading. Under Osiris's law power, this connection was forcibly severed, dragging the souls out of their bodies and guiding them into the air. They floated in the air in terror, seemingly trying to break free from this bondage, but under the pull of the law power they couldn't move an inch. At that moment, a silver sphere appeared in the sky, 6 circular rings revolving around its surface, spinning in a chaotic manner. Another wave of law power suddenly descended. Chapter 506. Password Recovery. The moment this law appeared, the soul that had been drawn back into the sky simultaneously broke free from its bindings and returned to the body that originally belonged to it. Osiris frowned and turned to look into the distance. A figure draped in a black imperial robe stepped through the void, holding a slowly rotating silver sphere, and was walking toward them. With each step he took, the underworld dissipated a little more, and at the same time, another phantom of a ghost city appeared behind him, with imperial palaces floating in the air, exuding a majestic imperial might. That was Fengdu. Lifespan not yet exhausted, souls cannot be detained. This is the rule of our great Xia. The gaze of the Emperor of Fengdu fell on Osiris, a coldness flickering in his eyes. Since when did the souls of my great Xia fall under your jurisdiction? Zhou Ping, standing beside with a sword, saw the Emperor of Fengdu and opened his mouth as if to greet him, but he didn't know what would be appropriate to say. Instead, the Emperor of Fengdu scrutinized him for a moment and spoke first. You are Zhou Ping? Yes. Zhou Ping nodded stiffly. Hello. Emperor of Fengdu. Osiris's pale eyes narrowed slightly. It seems what Yen Mo said was true, but your strength hasn't fully recovered, has it? To deal with you it is sufficient. The silver sphere in the Emperor of Fengdu's hand glimmered slightly, and an ancient and mysterious pressure of the great Tao suddenly descended. A silver ring shot out, heading straight for Osiris. 6 paths of reincarnation? A look of surprise appeared on Osiris's face as he raised the crook staff in his hand to meet the silver ring. Grayish-white once again enveloped the entire sky, but the silver ring seemed completely unaffected by this law. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through the void and reached Osiris, rapidly expanding and covering a large portion of the underworld. As if sensing the danger of this ring, Osiris raised his hand and summoned a large number of black resentful souls from the underworld, gathering them into a long river of resentful souls that coiled around him like ribbons. With a thought from the Emperor of Fengdu, the silver ring quickly contracted. The silver ring collided with the river of resentful souls, and piercing wails erupted from the river. The resentful souls touched by the silver ring melted away like ice and snow meeting sunlight. Yet the speed of the silver ring's contraction remained painfully slow. The Emperor of Fengdu narrowed his eyes slightly, waving his hand holding the 6 paths of reincarnation again, and 2 more rings flew out, enveloping Osiris and cutting through the river of resentful souls. At the same time, Zhou Ping, standing with his sword, moved like lightning. Clay. The crisp sound of the sword echoed through the sky as Zhou Ping slashed through space, crossing the river of resentful souls and stepping right in front of Osiris. The tip of the dragon elephant sword was aimed directly at Osiris's face. Feeling the overwhelming sword intent rushing toward him, Osiris, controlling the river of resentful souls, had no choice but to free one hand. A surge of divine power gathered at his fingertips, pointing toward the sword in midair. The divine power of the underworld god collided violently with the sword intent of the sword saint at that point. The clouds within a radius of several dozen kilometers exploded, and within this range all flying birds were shattered. The dragon elephant sword trembled violently, and a surge of underworld divine power rushed into Zhou Ping's body, wreaking havoc. Zhou Ping let out a muffled groan, retreating several steps in midair, his right hand gripping the sword trembling slightly. A hint of a smile appeared at the corner of Osiris's mouth, only to freeze on his face. The golden ribbons binding his waist suddenly shattered, and his pale outer robe was torn by the sword energy, revealing several bloodstains on his dry, dark skin beneath. Osiris looked down at his scarred body, his expression somewhat shocked. He had been injured by this sword. Not far away, the Emperor of Fengdu was surrounded by surging divine power, his black imperial robe fluttering in the wind, and the light of the 6 paths of reincarnation in his hand grew increasingly brilliant. The 3 silver rings finally sliced through the river of resentful souls, rapidly contracting toward Osiris's neck. The power of the law contained within could easily tear apart a divine body. Osiris snorted coldly, heavily stepping down with his right foot in the void. The underworld, suspended at the cloud's peak, projected once more, shrinking dozens of times after disappearing from the sky, condensing beneath Osiris's feet. Osiris stood on the underworld, holding the crook's staff, grayish-white energy swirling around him. The 3 silver rings, after contracting into a large circle with a radius of less than 300 meters, were firmly resisted at the periphery of the underworld, as if some invisible world was blocking the law's encroachment. Emperor of Fengdu, your 6 paths of reincarnation can only be used within the territory of Great Xia. As long as I am in the underworld, isolating your Great Xia's laws from the outside, your 6 paths of reincarnation will become ineffective. Osiris said with a cold smile. The Emperor of Fengdu raised an eyebrow and replied lightly. You are not wrong, but it seems you have forgotten one thing. 2/3 of your underworld was reshaped using Fengdu fragments, right? Osiris was taken aback. Even if you reforge it with your own laws and integrate it into this domain, turning it into your own power, it cannot change the fact that it contains the laws of my Great Xia. A glimmer of killing intent flashed in the Emperor of Fengdu's eyes. Do you really think that what you have seized has become your own? Fighting me with Fengdu fragments in front of me is truly, utterly foolish. As his voice fell, a pitch-black imperial throne suddenly shifted out from the Fengdu imperial palace behind the Emperor of Fengdu, hovering in mid-air. The Emperor of Fengdu gently patted his imperial robe and slowly sat down on the throne. Dense black patterns spread out from the throne like an interwoven spider web, extending across the pitch-black sky. These were the patterns of the law. When the black patterns collided with the underworld, Osiris could clearly sense that his control over the underworld was gradually slipping away. To be precise, his control over the parts reshaped by Fengdu fragments was being replaced by the Emperor of Fengdu. It was like Osiris had stolen the Emperor of Fengdu's account, but now the Emperor of Fengdu was in front of him, starting to recover the password using the bound phone number. Osiris could only watch helplessly as all of this unfolded. Because fundamentally this underworld was never his. The underworld surrounding Osiris began to tremble violently. The laws contained within the underworld were being altered by the Emperor of Fengdu, and the 3 silver rings swirling outside the domain finally broke through the law's blockade, beginning to shrink at an astonishing speed. A look of horror appeared in Osiris's pale eyes. No, this is impossible. This is clearly my underworld. How could you possibly? Swish. A flash of silver light burst forth in the air. The 3 rings simultaneously sliced through Osiris's neck, gently severing his head from his body. Chapter 507, The Second Seat. Osiris was slain beneath the 6 paths of reincarnation, and the remnants of the underworld completely lost control, shattering in the void. Emperor Fengdu stepped forward to the underworld, reaching out to grasp the void. Apart from the fragments of Fengdu that had been taken, the underworld that originally belonged to Osiris was also absorbed into the Fengdu shadow behind Emperor Fengdu, gradually solidifying. The entire underworld was consumed by Fengdu. The 1/5 fragment of Fengdu that had originally been taken by Osiris ultimately returned to Emperor Fengdu's hands, even bringing back a portion of the laws of the Egyptian underworld, along with interest. As the Fengdu shadow was completed, Emperor Fengdu's divine power began to rise, and his majestic imperial might echoed in the sky, evoking a sense of reverence in those who beheld it. Fengdu was inherently a part of Emperor Fengdu's strength. Now that the stolen Fengdu fragments had returned, his power was rapidly recovering. Although there was still a considerable gap from his peak, it was a significant step forward. In fact, the recently awakened Emperor Fengdu who had lost the Fengdu fragments was quite weak. If it weren't for the 6 paths of reincarnation, an artifact imbued with the laws of the Great Xia, along with Zhou Ping's assistance, killing Osiris would have been nearly impossible. Fortunately, this Egyptian god of the underworld ultimately perished under the laws of the Great Xia. Emperor Fengdu waved his hand lightly, and from the shadow of Fengdu behind him, a black coffin materialized, flying into the air to contain the dismembered body of Osiris. The corpse of a deity is not something that can be disposed of casually. Even though he had been erased by the 6 paths of reincarnation, the divine body still contained the power of Egyptian laws. If left unattended, it could easily cause irreversible effects on the surrounding environment. Moreover, if this corpse were to fall into the hands of other gods who govern death, Osiris could still be resurrected. He could not allow such a thing to happen. Furthermore, this corpse held additional value for Emperor Fengdu. I told you I will take back everything you stole one by one, Emperor Fengdu said calmly, looking at the wide-eyed head of Osiris in the coffin. He raised his head, his gaze fixed on the distance. 3 pieces remain. Cough cough cough. Beside him, Zhou Ping slowly sheathed the dragon elephant sword, his face still somewhat pale, and coughed lightly. Emperor Fengdu turned to him. Are you all right? I'm fine. Just a minor injury. Zhou Ping waved his hand. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving. Just as Emperor Fingdu was about to say something, Zhou Ping's figure swayed and vanished from sight, showing no intention of exchanging more words. Emperor Fingdu looked at the direction Zhou Ping had left with a strange expression and sighed deeply. This young man has no sense of courtesy at all? In the manner. Although Lin Jie and the others did not witness the scene of Osiris being slain, they could clearly feel that the divine power that originally belonged to Osiris in the sky had vanished without a trace. Is he dead? Bai Li Pangpang asked tentatively. We. Emperor Fingdu made his move. That underworld god should be finished, Lin Jie said, looking at the faintly visible Fingdu imperial palace above the clouds, feeling somewhat emotional. I didn't expect to see Emperor Fingdu in action. I can't believe we actually witnessed a divine battle. Bai Li Pangpang shouted excitedly at the sky. Uncle Li is amazing. Floating in the air, Jiang Er curiously leaned closer to Qingyu, the MP3 at her waist emitting a puzzled sound. Do you know that great Xia god? Yes, Qingyu nodded. In a sense he is one we released. Jiang Er gasped, covering her mouth in surprise. First the Sword Saint, now the great Xia god. Who exactly are they? Do they have such a powerful background? Cough cough. A coughing sound came from behind the group. Lin Jie and the others turned around to see Zhou Ping standing quietly behind them, carrying a sword box. Wow. Sword Saint Senior is incredible. Bai Li Pangpang suddenly jumped in front of him, his eyes sparkling. Xin Qingzhu had a somewhat complicated expression. After hesitating for a moment, he respectfully spoke up. I am Xin Qingzhu, greetings to the great Xia Sword Saint. Zhou Ping expressionlessly pushed aside Bai Li Pangpang, who was almost in his face, and looked at Xin Qingzhu, giving a slight nod. You are the undercover? Yes. Zhou Ping simply acknowledged. Before drawing my sword I didn't know who you were, so I held back a bit and only struck the altar. Xin Qingzhu's mouth twitched slightly. Thank you, Sword Saint Senior, for sparing my life. You should hurry and take your friend for treatment. Zhou Ping glanced at the ninth seat, who was barely conscious on the ground. His condition is a bit dangerous. Xin Qingzhu came to his senses, looking at the ninth seat who had lost consciousness. After thanking Zhou Ping again, he quickly picked up the ninth seat and ran off into the distance. Brother Zhuai. Bai Li Pangpang opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to say something. If there's anything, talk about it later. No, Brother Zhuai. Bai Li Pangpang scratched his head. I meant to say you're running to the hospital too slowly. Why not ride Chia's dragon? Xin Qingzhu suddenly froze in place, carrying the ninth seat, and turned his head stiffly. Huh. In the northern region of Great Xia, Tianhe City, in a certain primitive jungle. It seems that the murmurs have failed. A woman sat languidly on a thick branch, seemingly sensing something, slowly opening her eyes. Couldn't summon Osiris? Under the tree, an old man shrouded in shadows lifted his eyelids. Summoned him, but he was killed. The old man's brow furrowed slightly. Could it be that the great Xia god did not repair the divine kingdom's laws as the evil gods anticipated? Hard to say. The one who acted was the great Xia Sword Saint, along with the recently appeared Emperor Fingdu. The great Xia gods who acted over a year ago have not shown themselves. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly as if pondering something. The Fingdu fragments were taken and Emperor Fingdu has just awakened. His strength should not be enough to deal with Osiris, yet he still took the risk to act. If the great Xia gods were present, it shouldn't have been his turn to act as a still recovering deity. Are you saying that the great Xia gods really? The woman sitting on the branch's eyes brightened slightly. The old man silently nodded. If that's the case, then Osiris's death isn't a loss. The old man raised his head, looking ahead, a strange smile appearing on his wrinkled face. At least no one will come to disturb us. Before him, amidst the gray and shattered valley, a pure black and complete altar was emitting a faint dark light. Chapter 508. The Unbreakable Ceiling. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of the heart rate monitor echoed in the hospital room as Xin Qingzhu pushed open the door and stepped into the corridor outside. How is it? Lin Jie stood up and asked. Temporarily out of life-threatening danger. The expressions of Lin Jie and the others relaxed a bit, and Bai Li Pangpang couldn't help but exclaim, I didn't expect that this ninth seat who acted so heroically was actually an undercover. I thought he was just plain foolish. Chao Yuan rolled his eyes silently beside him. You think everyone is like you? Old Chao, have you lost it again? Want to find a place to spar? Chao Yuan's mouth twitched slightly. Wait for me 2 days. Wait 2 days. What can you do in 2 days? Bai Li Pangpang suddenly thought of something and looked at Chao Yuan suspiciously. You're not about to break through, are you? I already touched the threshold during training in the warehouse. After this battle, that feeling has become even stronger. Chao Yuan looked down at his hands. I have a premonition that in these 2 days I will break through. Old Chao, I was just joking with you, hee hee. It's fine to cross a realm, but who would dare to face Chao Yuan in a one-on-one fight in his berserk state? Well, except for my sister Lan. Ahem ahem ahem. A slight cough came from the other side of the chair. Lin Qier and the others turned to see Zhou Ping quietly sitting in the corner, coughing softly. Senior Sword Saint, why don't you go get checked out and rest a bit? Lin Qier said with some concern. Zhou Ping shook his head. Just a minor injury and divine power can't be treated in a hospital. He had fought with Osiris and both had been injured. However, Osiris only had external wounds from the sword energy, while Zhou Ping had part of his body eroded by the divine power of the god of the underworld, which was an internal injury. Such injuries, of course, could not be healed by modern medicine. Lin Qier and the others exchanged glances, their expressions turning serious. Zhou Ping was not only their teacher but also humanity's highest combat power. His body having issues was undoubtedly a significant matter. There's no need to wear that expression, Zhou Ping said, seeing the heavy looks on Lin Qier and the others' faces. It's just a minor injury. I'm not dying immediately. When fighting gods, how can one avoid injuries? Having spent so much time with Lin Qier and the others, Zhou Ping had relaxed a bit, no longer as restrained and vigilant as at the beginning, and their communication had become much more natural. In Zhou Ping's eyes, Lin Qier and the others had gradually transformed from troublesome strangers to troublesome acquaintances, and finally into not-so-troublesome students of mine. Of course, this was the result of Lin Qier and the others' continuous efforts over the past few months. They were among the few exceptions Zhou Ping had. Lin Qier and the others sighed deeply. Senior Sword Saint, you're so powerful yet can only tie with gods. Has anyone ever killed a god in human history? Bai Li Pangpang asked curiously. Zhou Ping shook his head. No, standing shoulder to shoulder with gods and killing gods are two entirely different matters. Throughout history there have always been a few exceptional individuals who could fight gods without losing, but that's about it. The so-called gods are not just another form of life. They are also embodiments of certain laws. And only the laws can erase the laws. Humans are merely creatures that exist within the laws. No matter how strong they become, as long as they cannot grasp the power of the laws, they cannot kill gods. This is a fundamental difference in the essence of life. Lin Qier and the others pondered this. Then is it possible for humans to master the laws? And Qingyu's eyes were filled with curiosity. Perhaps it's impossible. Zhou Ping paused for a moment. At least historically, no one has ever achieved it. Upon hearing this answer, the corridor fell into silence. Do you know why we are called the pinnacle of humanity? Zhou Ping continued. Because this realm is the highest peak that humanity can reach. Beyond this, there is no path. Although many exceptionally gifted individuals throughout history have tried to break this ceiling, they all failed. The pinnacle of humanity represents the honor of humanity's highest combat power, but it is also a kind of shame. Therefore, the vast majority of those at the pinnacle of humanity dislike this title. In the silence, Lin Qier slowly opened his mouth. So, humans can never defeat gods? Zhou Ping was silent for a moment. Theoretically, yes, but what? The eyes of everyone brightened. But Yi Fan believes I can. Zhou Ping sighed helplessly. He always believes that I am the most likely person to break this ceiling and reach a realm that no one has ever reached. Commander Yi? Lin Qier asked in confusion. Why? I don't know either. Zhou Ping slowly closed his eyes. I'm just an ordinary person. I don't know why he has such great hopes for me. Ordinary person. Lin Qier's mouth twitched slightly. And Qingyu stared at Zhou Ping, his eyes filled with unprecedented curiosity. He licked his lips, lost in thought. From his waist, the MP3 played Jiang Er's voice. What are you thinking? After all, they were in a hospital, and Jiang Er did not appear in ghost form but instead transformed into a magnetic field, hiding inside in Qingyu's MP3. The strongest combat power of humanity with the potential to break the ceiling. I really want to dissect it. And Qingyu murmured. Jiang Er. What a strange person. Jiang Er thought to himself. Just as everyone was talking, a crisp phone ring sounded. Zhou Ping was taken aback, pulled out his phone from his pocket and answered. Hello, he spoke softly. What? Zhou Ping suddenly stood up from his seat, a rare look of shock appearing in his eyes. The next moment he bent down and uncontrollably started coughing. Cough, cough, cough. Okay, I understand. I'll wait for you here. Zhou Ping's sudden reaction startled Lin Qier and the others. Since they met him, they had never seen him with such a serious expression. Senior Sword Saint, what happened? Bai Li Pangpang asked tentatively. Zhou Ping held the phone, standing still for a moment, then turned to Lin Qier and the others, his brow slightly furrowed. Everyone immediately return to the safe house with me. Yi Fan will arrive in 12 minutes. Commander Yi? Lin Qier and the others exchanged glances, confusion evident in their eyes. Haven't the issues here been resolved? What is Commander Yi coming here for now? Zhou Ping shook his head. If nothing unexpected happens, the remaining 2 cities can only be handled by you all. Something has happened in the north.